some food for thought. Pun definitely intended. One thing that I don't hear a lot of individuals who are involved in the survival industry talk about is the true breakdown of nutritional value of foods. And this video is going to be a little bit different than some of the other videos that I've been doing recently, but I think it's important. I teach this during some of my classes here at the Appalachian Bushman School because I want individuals not to be swayed one way or the other. Okay, I have my own views on eating and what we should be eating, but I want to just give people some facts. And I want to show you that if you would sit down and think about some things that we're going to talk about in a second, bugging out or living off the land long term is a very difficult task. So I always teach people that in a short-term scenario, we're going to look at fire, shelter, water. Those things will sustain you in the short term. We can throw food right out the window in that initial scenario if people are coming out to find us. Not that we shouldn't be looking for it, but we can not worry about it as much because we can go 3 days without food. We can go even longer without food. So I don't want people to worry about that. But after that, when we need to start worrying about food, that's what your life is going to revolve around. It's not going to revolve around all these high-tech, crazy things that we like to do out here. And I'm one to say, I mean, I do all this bushcrafting stuff, but I'm well fed when I'm doing it. I'm taking food out with me when I'm doing it. I'm not just going out and living for months and months and months off the land. It's very, very difficult to be able to do that, especially if you are by yourself trying to do that. So your world is going to revolve around securing food. So I want to show you a few different things about food and nutrition that might open your mind up a little bit more to actually what we're looking to secure when we're out in the field. First thing we want to identify is how many calories does a human need per day. Now, you can go online and look at a calorie calculator. It's going to give you your exact amount. But what I want you to remember when you do that, put a high level of physical activity, because if you're out in the woods in a survival type scenario, you're going to be cutting wood, you're going to be traveling for water, you're going to be working on projects. So you need to put a high level of activity. So on average, I put a whole bunch of different stuff in. We're going to say 2,200 calories per day per person. Okay. Very good, simple, round number. That's how many calories we need to sustain ourselves. Our bodies burn calories even when we're just sitting, when we're sleeping, for bodily functions and very basic movement. That's what we need to sustain ourselves. So let's break it down a little bit further from there. Knowing that we need 2,200 calories a day to sustain ourselves, where do calories come from? Well, first I want to back up a little bit and talk about two different things. There's macro and micronutrients, meaning big nutrients and small nutrients. First, micronutrients are going to be vitamins and minerals. So we're going to get that out of the way. We're not going to worry about that. And the reason why we're not going to worry about that in a short-term scenario is that we can have all the vitamin C, all the vitamin B12 in the world, and that's not going to sustain life. We just need calories. So calories are counted in macros, macros being big nutrients. And big nutrients, macros, are broken down into three categories. First, we have protein. Second, we have carbohydrates or carbs. And lastly, we have fats. Protein, in a general term, is the building blocks of our muscles. That's what we need to sustain our muscle mass and sustain our tendons and things like that. So, building blocks of muscle. Carbohydrates are our source of energy. Fats are used to support all of our major organ functions. So we need all three in order for our body to function properly. Knowing this, now we can progress one step further. Every gram of a macronutrient have a certain amount of calories attached to it. So if we have 1 gram of protein, we are receiving 4 calories. If we have 1 gram of carbohydrate, 4 calories. And lastly, if we have 1 gram of fat, we're receiving a whopping 9 calories. So just looking at this overall, what would we want to eat most of to sustain that 2,200 calories per day in a survival scenario? Exactly, fats. Fats are going to give us the most calories per gram for our diet. Now let's take those macros one step further to put this into context for people. And I want to just give you this information and you dissect it how you want to, but this is scientific, you know, it's nothing that I'm just making up here. Let's look at lettuce. One head of lettuce. How many calories do we get from one head of lettuce? 53. 53 calories if we eat one whole head of lettuce. Now, let's say for a head of lettuce, we can probably carry close to 1 pound of red meat. Anybody have any guesses with that? We have about 795 calories for 1 pound of red meat. Now, what if we carried 1 pound of duck fat? And I say duck fat because duck fat stores better at room temperature. It doesn't get soft in heat. It works really well. So let's say duck fat. And it's much more palatable than any other type of fat that I've ever had. That yields 3,616 calories per pound. So let's look at it that we're already in a caloric deficit and we're in a survival scenario. What do we want to be focusing on? Even if we hunt an animal, we should be looking at getting that fat out of that animal. That's where the most dense calorie is going to come from, followed by a protein source, which is meat, then followed by plants. That's the basic breakdown of macronutrients. So just looking at that, I think everybody can agree that we're looking at fats and proteins as our primary source of what we would want to eat while we're out here. Now, I'm not trying to by any means put down people who want to just eat plants, but plants don't offer the caloric intake that fats and protein are going to. Now, I know what you're going to say. Dan, you said earlier in the video that carbohydrates are a source of energy. Not to get too deep into this, but if you are only living on fats and proteins, at some point your body starts to create ketones, which we could talk about in a separate video. If everybody wants to, just comment below. But ketones are basically a fat that is transitioned in your body into an energy source, and your body will burn that for fuel. So fat and protein alone can get you through, but again, it's going to be very, very difficult to go out and do this. So I think people have to change their mindset when they think that they're just going to go out, take a gun, and they're just going to live high on the hog while they're out there living life and just be enjoyable. Your life is going to revolve around food, food, food. That's all you're going to be doing all day, every day. So a quick recommendation from me is when we think about food and we're thinking about that fat and protein, what we're looking for is the easiest way to get food. So of course, what we can do, we can fish, we can go to the water's edge secondary, we can look at small game third, fourth, we start looking at that medium game, and lastly, large game. Now, of course, you don't have to go in that order, and if you see a deer that you can hunt, and it's in the same location all the time, don't keep fishing and think, oh, well, I need to wait until everything else is exhausted to get that animal. But if you take that order and progression into thought, then it's going to make life easier of where we're going to get our meat sources from and where we're going to get our fat sources from. So it's just a couple things to think about. Again, take that information, write it down, stare at it a little bit, and draw your own conclusions of what you want to do and what your plan's going to be if something bad or if you ever get yourself in a survival scenario happens. This was Dan Wowak with Cold Cracker Bushcraft. I hope you enjoyed this video. I know it's a little bit out of the norm, but it's something that I like to teach and I want people to understand. If you have any specific questions, hit me up with an email or a DM or whatever you want to do, and I'll talk you through it. And until the next video, stay in the woods, guys. Well, there's a wrap. And is it hot out today? Hey, one additional tip. The best way to eat lettuce, throw it in the woods. I'm kidding, eat whatever you like. I like red meat.